Casting lots causes contentions to cease, and keeps the mighty apart. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a castle. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we share together from Proverbs chapter 18 and verses 18 and 19. The subject of these two verses is contentions. Unfortunately, contentions often arise, people striving to assert their preferred state, and the result can be quite disastrous. So verse 18 suggests that one way of solving a contention is simply to cast lots. Casting lots causes contentions to cease and keeps the mighty apart. So if one party promotes one person and another party promotes another person, they can't both rule together. You can't resolve the matter by debate, and so you cast lots. And often when there's a draw, that's the approach that people take. And obviously the proverb is implying that this is a good way of solving a contention, because it's better that contentions be solved than that they be maintained and remain a continual distraction. A contention between two powerful people can end in war. The Falklands War, could it have been resolved by casting of lots? It would have been much cheaper. The allocation of land in Israel to the various tribes was done by lot. The robe of the Lord Jesus was given to just one of the soldiers by lot. The scriptures have several verses talking about contentions, and generally they are of a negative nature. But one that is positive is the exhortation by Jude to believers in the Lord Jesus. He says, "Beloved, while I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation, I found it necessary to write to you exhorting you to contend earnestly for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints." And he goes on to say that men have crept in to lead the people of God away from the way of God. And the people of God need to contend to maintain the ways that were presented and taught by the Lord Jesus. But it's interesting that in contending for the faith, it's not our job to condemn the opponent. Judgment is God's responsibility. And gives the example when Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." And so the devil wanted one course, and Michael resisted him. But he didn't judge the devil. He just said, "Let the Lord judge you in this matter." And so if we are going to contend for something, we need to identify the issue and not demean the antagonist on the matter. And in contending, to make sure that we don't act against the ways of the Lord Jesus. We resist the devil, but we do not condemn him. For ultimately we're striving, the gospel is striving not against flesh and blood, but by principalities and powers in heavenly places. The person who stands before us is not the problem. It is the ideas and principles that that person has subscribed to, probably because they've been deceived by it, or have not adequately researched the situation. But the Lord is the judge. Jude goes on to say, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his saints to convict all who are ungodly, among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him." So Paul urges us to contend for the faith, and obviously that's not a matter that can be resolved by a casting of a lot. But for the majority of situations where people argue about a particular thing, One way of solving it, Solomon suggests, is by casting lots. And another, following Jude, is having made our case, to leave the matter with God. The next verse was, a brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like bars of a castle. Castles were built to be strong, and many of them had a dungeon in them where prisoners could be restrained and kept locked in. They could not escape. Bars of a prison. And contentions can become bars that lock people in, that completely distract our action from doing other things that could be more useful. Therefore, the scriptures generally take a negative view of contentions, and we can read a few New Testament verses to see this. One of the motivations for the letter to the Corinthians was, it has been declared to me concerning you, my brethren, by those from Chloe's household, that there are contentions among you. And so the church was full of arguments, and Paul had to write a very long letter addressing the arguments. And what we find is that there's merit on both sides of the argument. And the problem of the contentions is the fact that people were not acting in love and in submission to one another, but they were arguing strongly their particular case, which could have been technically right, but spiritually wrong, in the context of the gospel, not right. For example, idols are nothing. Therefore, it doesn't matter if we eat meat offered to idols. But the other side said, if you eat meat offered to idols, you're worshipping idols. But some people do worry about idols, and our actions might lead them to sin. The other issue with idols is that indeed the idol is just a piece of wood, but there is a demon behind it, and we do not want to give ground to demons. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he says, I fear lest when I come I shall not find you as I wish, and that I shall be found by you such as you do not wish, lest there be contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, backbiting, whispering, conceits and tumults. So he'd written all these letters to resolve the contentions, to bring balance to the argument, and they should have put these things behind. But had they? The works of the flesh are listed in Galatians as idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies. So here, making an argument about something to assert their own selfish desires is a work of the flesh, not a work of the Spirit. And the believers should walk by the Spirit and not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. Should know how to deal with differences without bringing them up all the time and causing a break of fellowship. But of course, Christian history is littered with arguments and contentions, and ultimately divided the churches. And so Paul says to Timothy, avoid foolish disputes, genealogies, contentions, and strivings about the law. They are unprofitable and useless. And I guess that's the final word. If someone wants to argue about something, unless it is critical, we can just walk away from the discussion. Avoid these things. Don't get involved in the petty arguments that people make about side issues that will distract us from godly living and serving the Lord, reaching out to those who need his love. And so if there is an argument about something, if there's a contention, try and resolve the matter. Analyse the arguments and balance one against the other. If consensus can't be reached, then we can avoid the issue, drop the matter. Or if a decision has to be made, cast lots. Let the Lord choose the course of action. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a castle. So try hard not to break fellowship over the matter, and don't let the matter escalate to war or to actions unworthy of a servant of the Lord.